anyone who has a knowledge worker job is in a space where if they don't start evolving with the tools and integrating them, they stand to be severely disrupted.
Welcome to Midland Money Mindset, your weekly dose of inspiration and insights to ensure you enjoy each step of your journey. Whether you're saving for the future, planning your next big adventure, or simply looking to add more joy to your life, you've come to the right place. Now, let's dive in.
In a world where people feel overwhelmed by rapid technological change, creative disruption, and the fear of being left behind, today's Midland Money Mindset guest brings clarity and hope. Taryn Southern, award-winning storyteller, creative technologist, and pioneering voice in AI, has spent more than 20 years helping humans navigate the emotional and practical challenges of emerging technology. From creating the world's first AI-generated pop album to directing a Tribeca premiere documentary on brain-computer interfaces and even transforming her own breast cancer journey into empowering tech tools, Taryn reveals a vision where innovation actually amplifies human potential. If you've ever wondered how to thrive, not just survive, in the age of AI, this conversation might just change the way you see the future. I'm Larry Sprung, your host for the Midland Money Mindset and founder and wealth advisor of Midland Financial. Let's dive into the show. Well, I am super excited today to have Taryn Southern with us, founder of Creative AI Bootcamp, and welcome to the show, Taryn.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. We met and I saw you at Fidelity's Inside Track. It was a great presentation and, I really felt aligned with what you had to say and what you were talking about. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity to share your story and what you're doing with our listeners. So before we go into what you're doing today with Creative AI Bootcamp, perhaps you can give our listeners a little bit of an idea of your entrepreneurial journey, what led you up to that point, and what it was like, becoming an entrepreneur for you, for Taryn.
Sure. Well, I've had a pretty unconventional entrepreneur journey. In fact, I probably wouldn't have called myself an entrepreneur for most of the past, I suppose, 20 years, even though I have, sustained a business, just an unconventional one at that. So I started in the world of entertainment as a writer, producer, and was very young coming out of college and pretty intrigued by what was happening in the content world. So I was one of the earliest people on YouTube uploading videos, probably one of the first 100 people in the YouTube partner program when you could only make 3 cents on your videos at the time. And was sort of enthralled by this idea of building businesses around content. And so I the first 10 years of my career advised a lot of companies on how to build digital communities, how to create content, and how to sell products based on that content. And then over the last decade, I really focused my expertise in the frontier tech space. So helping tech companies, AI companies, neurotech, do the same, but from sort of a different vantage point. So I kind of do a mix of, science and tech communication, combined with advisory around how to use innovative tools to tell stories. And storytelling really is critical in this day and age, whether you want to raise money or build a community online so that you can actually have an audience and a set of consumers to sell to. So it's sort of the new distribution channel, and it's not going away anytime soon. Now I spend a lot of my time teaching executives on how to integrate AI tools into their creative workflows, whether that's marketing, communications, content creation, as well as how to think about the future of work and how to build lean startups, which really is the future of entrepreneurship in my view.
Right. So, one of the things you mentioned when you were giving us your overview, and, I know is you were a very early adopter of AI, and that's something that's being talked about. I don't think you could go anywhere without it being talked about today. What had you leaning into it and seeing its power so early on?
Well, one of the advantages of being early in the YouTube space was having access to a lot of the creator programs that were launched by YouTube in the 2014, 2015, 2016 era. So I was part of a Google Artist in Residence program in 2016, where I was experimenting with a lot of the early tools still in a black box that Google engineers were working on. And this included their early AI tools, pre-large language models. So I was doing mostly a lot in virtual reality, spatial computing, spatial storytelling. But I started experimenting with some of their early music tools, was blown away by the capabilities, and reached out to a bunch of other companies that were at the time developing music tools, also not large language model based, obviously, and was kind of just astounded by the progress. So I made an album. I produced a pop album using about 5 different AI tools at the time and released the first track in 2017 and a full album in 2018.
One of the things that I've seen, and with everything that you're seeing and hearing and everything you've done related to AI, I want to ask you, because you have such a depth and breadth of experience with it. Is there anything about the technology that scares you?
I would not trust anyone who's deep in the AI space and doesn't have grave concerns about where this is all going. I think, like many of us in tech, we see the possibility space. We see the incredible advantages of using this technology to design a life that is better than the one that we currently have. And I prefer to live in that space. But of course, I have grave concerns about privacy, about misinformation, about security, about fraud. And I do dedicate some of my time on social media to breaking down some of those concerns and teaching people how to ameliorate them or confront them. So it's of course, it's very important.
Are there things that people are leaning into today that, you say you teach this? Are there maybe 1 or 2 tips you could give to our listeners that might be helpful to them to be able to feel a little bit more comfortable leaning into this technology, utilizing it, but at the same time, feeling a little bit more comfortable, or at least putting some guardrails in place?
Sure. Well, I always say first and foremost, the only way to get comfortable with the technology and to really understand the dangers, but also the possibilities, is to experiment. So take a problem in your life today or in your work and say, can an AI tool help me with this? And start experimenting. And you will quickly learn, where the comfort points are and the discomfort points are. That being said, of course, there are plenty of tips that I give people on the regular. The first, of course, is just, especially this is a money podcast, so to develop a secret word with family members and close friends, if necessary, to ensure that you are not scammed. The scams are getting really good. In fact, last week I was a friend of mine who I've known for a while, who is kind of well known for having a fair amount of money, reached out to me on Telegram and said, "Hey, it's been a while since we've caught up. Let's schedule a call." And so scheduled a call with him. And it's not strange that this person would be reaching out to catch up. And I get on this Zoom call, and there he is in video. And he's like, "Hey, Taryn, good to see you." And quickly realize that he cannot hear me. And I get this little pop-up in my Zoom that says you need to download a new software in order for the update to take place. And I look at the Zoom link and I'm like, there's something a bit odd about that Zoom link. It still had the zoom.com, but it was one of those fictional links that had been created. And so I texted my friend and I said, "Hey, can we just jump on a call? I want to make sure that this is really you." Immediately, the Telegram chat is deleted. And I come to realize that it was the software that they wanted to have me download was, a phishing software. So,
right.
And these scams are everywhere and they're getting so good. And so I always say people need to develop a safe word. They need to have this kind of critical thinking always running. Is that link secure? Even emails that look like they come from Coinbase or look like they come from your institutional bank so often can actually be scammers that have figured out how to reroute through the institutional email backend. And so that's number one. Number two is developing a really critical eye about what you see online. We already have a problem in naming truth based upon real footage, never mind fake footage that looks real. And so the AI tools of today, Sora, Google VO, they look real. They sound real. Now, I can tell the difference because we're still a hair away from it being perfect reality. But I would say the general population cannot tell. And in fact, I've seen so many inspirational videos being reshared and going viral on Instagram that are completely fake. And there's no easy way to combat that other than really putting your critical thinking hat on and looking for the telltale signs. Does that pattern look a little off? Are those animals just a little too Pixar cute? And then also using tools like Google Synth ID, which allows for you to actually upload photos, videos, text, and it will tell you with decent accuracy whether or not something is AI generated.
Wow.
Perfect,
Wow.
But it's helpful. So unfortunately, we all have to work a little harder to ensure that the information that we're receiving online is real.
Yeah, I agree. And great tips. We actually this morning, I don't know if the video will be out by the time this airs, but I just recorded a video for my YouTube channel, Larry Sprung CFP, and one of the things we were talking about was fraud and having a family password for that effect. And your point about Coinbase, for example, we had a family that we worked with where the husband basically lost $150,000 worth of Bitcoin by clicking a link that he should never have clicked. So, those are some great tips, very easy to follow and can keep you out of danger. So thank you for sharing those. As somebody who made an album, right, a music album using AI, a pop album, we're a firm that we support creatives. We have a number of authors in the romance space and other areas and other creatives. And many of them are really concerned about AI and what it could potentially do to their profession. Do you think that their fears are founded? And is there anything that they can do to kind of protect themselves from a creative entrepreneurial standpoint?
Oh, this is a really big question. And I think it's important for everyone to realize that we're actually all in this together. This is not just a problem that creatives face. This is a problem that everyone faces. Anyone who has a knowledge worker job, call it white collar work, is in a space where if they don't start evolving with the tools and integrating them, they stand to be severely disrupted. And I think we are in for a world of pain for a period of time. What happens on the other side of that, I think, is actually, you can start envisioning how the world starts changing for the better when you kind of go out 5, 10, 15 years. But there's this really uncomfortable period that I think that we're going to undergo, and it's not just going to hit creatives. Here's the reality. We live in a capitalistic society where people are always going to be driven towards efficiency. Businesses, individuals, right? And so I often hear from creatives is, oh my gosh, if you're an animator, this AI generator can animate faster and better than you can. And it doesn't require any sleep or any breaks. And the animator is terrified. But then the animator quickly realizes that they can very quickly generate beautiful cinematic soundtracks to their animations and cut out, 10 other people to actually make the movie that they've always wanted to make from their bedroom, right? And so they get really excited about that. But meanwhile, the composer's sitting there being like, wait a second, this just took my job. And so what I often say to creatives is, yes, there is, you are now in a very competitive landscape where your competitor is smarter, faster, and on many counts better. So what do? You have to completely shift your entire business model. I don't think we can think in terms of specific, narrowly defined career choices anymore. I think we have to think about what are the problems we want to solve and how can we do that from a multidisciplinary kind of space. And I do think that people who have developed an expertise over many, many years can still utilize that expertise. They understand the market. They understand what the world and people want. They understand the niche problems in their communities, and they can start making stuff from that space and use these tools to fill in the gaps. So I'm sure all of us have had some kind of dream that we've wanted to pursue, but we couldn't do it because it would have required a lot of capital or a lot of outside expertise that we have to bring in to make that dream a reality, whether that's building an app, right? Or there are no guardrails. There are no gatekeepers anymore. There are no limitations for what you can build. Larry Sprung, or, Kate and John back in Kansas, or whoever is like dreaming up something. And so it really just comes down to thinking that through. How do you apply your expertise, start playing with these tools, and like do the thing that you've always wanted to do and build without the limitations.
Yeah. So I'm hearing get comfortable with the uncomfortable and kind of really take a deep, hard look at what you really want to do and what your impact's going to be, and see if you can leverage these tools to your advantage to use it in accomplishing whatever that is that you're looking to do.
Yes.
So it's going to take a change.
I really do think that AI is going to force a lot of us into what I'll call solopreneurship, or small team business ownership, and kind of pushing us to elevate our services to the next level, and say, like, what is wrong with the current legacy systems that we use today,
Right.
which a lot of us use legacy systems for our businesses. How can we improve upon those using these kinds of tools and make our services better? And I do think a lot of people will be really, really successful. I'm already seeing it happen. I have friends who have built apps these are non-coders, okay, who've built apps that solve very specific problems in their niche because they are aware of what those problems are. They already have a customer base. They can go and build this thing now with no code AI tools. They can integrate their design skills, integrate their storytelling skills, and then they go and they sell that thing. And many of them are doing quite well financially with very little overhead, single person or 2 or 3 person teams. And I think
prior to AI, that would have taken them a long time and a lot of money to get to that point.
Venture financing, a bunch of engineers in another foreign country, you name it.
Yeah.
Let's pause for a moment. What actually brings you joy? It's something most people never think about, yet it shapes how your life unfolds. You're busy. You make responsible choices. You even plan ahead. But have you slowed down long enough to ask if what you're building supports a life you enjoy living? That's the reason I built my YouTube channel, to help you bring more joy to your money journey. Sure, we'll talk about all the essentials, but my real goal is to help you connect your finances with what brings you joy, because money is the tool that funds the moments that matter. If you want to explore that connection more deeply, visit my YouTube channel at Larry Sprung.
Yeah, one of the things I've heard you say is that you think tech will make Buddhists out of all of us. What do you mean by that?
So I think tech will make Buddhists out of all of us because it forces a kind of non-attachment to the present, what we have now. I think we are in for a roller coaster ride. We're already seeing it happen. And this idea that whether it's Stoicism or Buddhism, this idea that we can be a little less attached to our current realities, a little happier in the present moment. And also there's kind of a realization that we are not that special. We've been taught for so long that as humans, we have these distinctly unique traits, and to hone in on our unique talents, right, that make us unique and give us leverage in the marketplace. And that no longer exists, really. And so while that might hurt many people professionally, and I'm not downplaying that, I think that I have a lot of empathy for everyone that's going through this. I also think there's kind of a bigger picture here to look at, which is our own humanity and like what actually ties us all together, which is just the human experience and kindness and community. And, maybe placing so much of an emphasis, particularly in the United States, on hustle culture has been detrimental to us. So I kind of like this idea that we're not all that special.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Definitely creating a shift in the world, really.
Yeah.
Not just here, but globally for sure. And I think this is an area that you have, a lot of experience in with YouTube and being a creator. With the growth of AI and really democratizing, there's this democratization now of being able to give or create content at scale. How do you think that YouTube is going to play or is playing a role in elevating voices and brands? I think this is a space you're playing in constantly, right?
It's a good question. I don't actually know how YouTube per se is elevating voices and brands. I think people who have an authentic voice and are consistent do find an audience. It's hard work, but it's absolutely possible. And I think for all of the ills of social media, of which there are many, one of the benefits is that we have a global conversation happening that wasn't present 15, 20 years ago around pretty much everything you can imagine. So whether you're marginalized, whether you're going through some kind of challenge that you thought you were alone in, you now have a community, a global community for which you can find support and education. And I think that is really valuable. So I to that end, I think YouTube is very exciting and will continue to be at building communities around things that people care about and matter.
I know it's very helpful to me when I need to fix something I can't figure out how to fix. It's usually like, it's excellent in that regard.
Yes.
For not a handy person, I can become handy as long as I find the right video and the right problem solver. So it's hugely beneficial. With AI being everywhere, we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this show. And I think you talked a little bit about it in terms of, kind of the speed. If you have an idea and there was an app involved or some kind of coding, AI can be very instrumental in compressing the time frame from a time perspective, compressing the financial, means that you need to get that done. But how do you recommend business owners, if I'm already in business, I'm not launching an idea, I'm already have a business, how do you recommend that they use AI? Are there certain areas that, like across the board, if you're a business owner, regardless of what you do, that you should be looking at and thinking about with the advent of AI and where we are today? Or is it really specific to the industry and the purpose?
It's both. And obviously, I'm biased as a storyteller. I think that storytelling is probably one of the most critical aspects of staying alive as a business through this transition. And these tools will undoubtedly make you a better storyteller if you know how to use them correctly. If you don't know how to use them correctly, you could just end up generating more slop and actually undermining the message of your business. But really getting clear on what problems are you solving and for whom, and how do you reach that customer base in a new way. So I think that's like the number one thing that you can use AI tools for. I think another thing is better understanding your own data. You don't have to be an expert in data analysis to simply upload all of the relevant data to your business to one of these large language models and have them create unique insights for you, improving your sales pipelines, improving your customer service. All of these things can be done simply by organizing and labeling your data and making sure that you've set up a process where you can be actually letting the AI do what it does best, which is like crunching a lot of information and distilling that down into actionable insights for you as a business. And as we move further into agentic AI, you can actually take many of the very narrow workflows in your industry, which only you know about. What are the things that are kind of routine tasks that you're doing regularly? How can you create an agentic system to fully automate that process with maybe a few human touch points in that loop? And, whether that helps reduce some of your time overhead spent doing these tasks, whether it helps reduce some of your workforce, if that's an issue. I think that a lot of these, I think that those are kind of the strategies that I would look at first as a business owner.
Yeah, I think that's good. You look at it from both broad and narrow. It's once you get a handle on it, then you can narrow down a little bit further, which is excellent. And we're seeing so much movement with a lot of these tools, so it's great. I'm going to pivot here for a minute because you've talked about storytelling a couple times, and the importance of story. You're a storyteller. You're helping brands tell their story. And one of the things that you did was you decided to share your breast cancer diagnosis and journey through storytelling. Why did you decide to share that story with, the greater universe, if you will?
Well, I think for one thing, as a content creator for so long, you get very comfortable sharing yourself online. And I come from kind of a cohort of young people who were the first to do that and were kind of mocked for doing so. But in my experience, it's always been net positive to share aspects of my life online. And so for me, I think it was kind of a couple things. I figured one, people are going to find out anyway. Two, I was in a year of treatment, aggressive treatment. So it just sort of seemed like it would be pretty hard to hide it. I also looked pretty sick, while I was going through that, and I couldn't actually do a lot of the work that I wanted to do during that time. So it made sense to kind of present that authentically. Also, being a young woman diagnosed with breast cancer was kind of unique, and sharing that journey and sharing the information has proved to be very helpful with a lot of other young women and people in my network who've used that content to help make their own decisions about treatment.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing your story. I'm not even sure if you're aware of this, but my mom, who's one of the namesakes of this firm, she's the LIN of Mitlin. Her name was Linda. She was diagnosed at a very young age with breast cancer also, fought for about 13 or 14 years and then passed away at the age of 47. This was 28 years ago, prior to a lot of the treatments that they have today. And I remember her looking to others at that time. There wasn't online or internet, but other people for stories and inspiration on how, and resources. So, it's very helpful. And you telling your story, I'm sure you probably will never know how many people you impacted. So, thank you for doing that. And then you even went one step further, which I think is going to be a huge help for, hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of women. And you basically took your cancer journey, took it and combined it with your AI passion, and you merged them to create a breast cancer GPT, right? What made you to go to that, go to that level? And what's the ultimate goal that you're trying to create by creating this breast cancer GPT for other women?
Well, I thank you. First of all, I think that part of it is I'm constantly experimenting with the tools and trying to figure out what their limitations are, where they break. And I figured what a great way to kind of encapsulate my knowledge base around cancer treatment for young women than simply by uploading all of that data that I had, all of that information I had collected. I'd put together some guides around certain topics that you couldn't necessarily find a lot of information around on Google. And then presenting women with a process for how to ask the right questions and enter into their treatment plans. I think a lot of times people don't know what are the right questions to ask. What should the journey look like as I'm it's very scary and you're kind of in shock and there's a lot thrown at you. And so what's kind of unique about a GPT is you can create a customer journey. And so I can kind of present people with a path of questions that they can answer that will then provide them with more questions based upon the very specific nuances of where they're at, what their kind of goals are. And I think it helps kind of distill down a clearer landscape, in front of them. And so really that's why I wanted to do it, is like, can I actually do that with the current tools? And it turns out you can. It's not perfect. If I could, I would spend more time on it and there's so many other women who have also collected really helpful information. I'd love to incorporate that into the GPT to make it smarter.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it will get smarter and smarter over time as people, participate in there. And, it's better having something and having those resources than nothing. So it's really great that you've created that and really laid the foundation for it from your own journey, which is fantastic. And just to share with our listeners, I believe you're in remission at this point. Where are you considered, along the journey for yourself today?
Yeah, it's very strange how they consider how they calculate remission. It depends on the stage that you start in, and I was stage 3 when I was diagnosed. But yes, I'm technically in remission. I think I've been in remission for 6 years now. And I think at 10 years they consider you cured.
Okay.
But
I know some are 5, some are 10. It depends on, I think, where you were diagnosed and what that looked like. So,
yeah.
Well, we'll be pulling for you for the next 4 years to get to that cure level. So keep up the good work. And, we are the Midland Money Mindset, and we're all about joy. So we have to end on a joyful note. And it is joyful that you're in remission and working towards that cure stage. But at the same time, we always ask each of our guests the same final question, which is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
Such a great question. So I'm currently in New York City, and I have this incredible view outside of my window. And this is not, I don't live here, but just like waking up and sitting with a coffee and looking out at the sunrise and thinking through what I want to get done that day and what I'm grateful for. That's it. I mean, there's nothing better than that. But I'd say coffee, view, and gratitude.
Sounds amazing. Sounds amazing. And that New York skyline it's hardly beat. I was in the city for 2 days last week myself. So it's a great place. But so Taryn, we're going to have all of your information in the show notes. But if people want to learn more about you, learn more about Creative AI Bootcamp, or, just simply connect with you, what's the easiest and the best place for them to do that?
I update my Instagram the most often. So I would say Instagram, Taryn Southern. That's where you can find me. That's where you can find a lot of my content, and you can just connect with me there.
Awesome. Well, Taryn, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for taking out time out of your busy schedule in New York City to spend a little bit with us. We appreciate it. Our listeners do as well, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Larry. It was a delight.
What an inspiring conversation with Taryn Southern. A reminder that even in moments of uncertainty, creativity and courage can shape an extraordinary future. Her journey shows us that technology isn't here to replace us. It's here to reveal what's possible when we lean into our own potential. If today's episode shifted your perspective, stay with us. We've got more powerful stories, insights, and mindset transforming conversations coming your way. Taryn Southern and all she is up to can be found across most social media platforms. All the contact information needed to find them can be found in the show notes.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Midland Money Mindset. Remember, it's not just about the money, it's finding joy in the journey and embracing the right mindset. If you love the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Don't forget to follow along for more tips and inspiration. Please visit the social links below to connect with Larry or his guests. Until next time, keep smiling, keep thriving, and remember to think about, what did you do today that brought you joy?
The opinions voiced in the Midland Money Mindset Show with Lawrence Sprung are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy ensures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Guests on the Midland Money Mindset Show are not affiliated with CWM LLC.